Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to this Gwinnett Interfaith Alliance gathering. Thank you so much for coming. I'm Jenny Sankey. I'm one of the pastors here at Pleasant Hill Presbyterian Church. And Katie Day back there in the back row is our other pastor. And we've got several folks here from our congregation, and we are just grateful that you came out to join us for this event tonight. We have a wonderful group of speakers here who are ready to share. But I did want to recognize a couple folks who are here with us, some wonderful public figures that decided to join us tonight. So we've got Sheikh Rahman, who's the senator of District 5. Is that right? Yes. Just drop the card. So thank you so much for joining us. And we've got the chaplain from Gwinnett County Police Department. You're going to have to remind me your name, though. Al, thank you for being with us this evening. One announcement I would like to make is that we are going to have in our congregation a Palestinian peacemaker here in October 5th. It's a Saturday from 2 to 4 in our sanctuary, which is kind of on the other side of things in this building. And we would love to see all and any of you who would like to attend that. And there'll be some more details for that online. Finally, afterwards and during, if you need to, please help yourselves to drinks. There's coffee and water, and there's snacks. And afterwards, there's going to be some light soup and salad. And so please stay after and enjoy a meal with one another. All right, I'm going to pass the microphone off to Barbara, who will be our moderator this evening.
Welcome, everybody. We are so glad that you're here, and to the folks on Zoom, we welcome you and thank you for your patience. I know a lot of you have been waiting since 5. We apologize for the miscommunication of the different times, and we will make sure we'll just keep doing better, right? We all make mistakes. So we're grateful that you've chosen to spend your Sunday evening with us. One of the things that we do in the Interfaith Alliance as part of our mission to educate and create relationships in interfaith ways is we do an invocation that the Interfaith Alliance created the guidelines for, I believe 3 or 4 years ago, before COVID, before COVID times. And we adapt it for all of our events. And so I would like us all to take this moment and hear the words of our invocation for this event, as well as its words to the larger community. As we gather as citizens and public servants, we invite all present to bring their best selves, their open minds and caring hearts to the work before us. A conversation on the rising hate and intolerance in our community. Whether verbal or physical, expressions of hate must not lead in our actions. We invite each person here to call forth the spirit of love and compassion as we engage one another in our shared purpose to move our county and our communities towards a better quality of life for all residents, without hateful rhetoric or action. Let each of us present call forth the strength from our various faiths, beliefs, and moral codes to become better stewards of the trust and funds of all our residents. May we offer our compassion to all locally and globally who are suffering and in need of strength, courage, and resources to alleviate their suffering. We ask for our public servants the conscience and wisdom to make the right decisions on behalf of the citizens of our growing community. We offer our appreciation for those who serve our country, state, or county to preserve the peace and order in our communities. We seek to make this a welcoming environment for all in attendance, viewing remotely or watching this record through time. Give us thankful hearts for our good fortune to live in this country with its high ideals for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. May it be so. So, big topic, and we have wonderful faith leaders here, but y'all need to get to know them. So, I'm going to ask each of them to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about their faith community. Reverend Mimi.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Irma Mimi Guerra. I'm from Mexico, and I'm here since 1994, 30 years. I work for the Episcopal Church, and recently in 2022, Bishop appointed me to be the Hispanic missionary around Atlanta. So today we're going to speak about the title that we have, and it's very important. So it is wonderful to be here with you. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you. My name is Hamad Ahmed. I'm of Pakistani origin, but I was born in Sierra Leone in West Africa, raised in Toronto, Canada, and since 2019, I've been living here in Atlanta, Georgia. And I serve as the Imam of the Baytul Ata Mosque in Norcross, Georgia. And I am a member of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. And this community was founded in 1889 by Mirza Ghulam Ahmad of Qadian. He claimed that he was the latter-day reformer, the latter-day Messiah, who was sent by God, as foretold in all major world religions, to revive the true spirit of Islamic teachings in the latter days. He revived the Islamic teachings of peace, of justice, of love, of morality, and the motto of love for all, hatred for none. He championed the Islamic teachings of freedom of belief, freedom of conscience, freedom of speech, and freedom of thought. And he championed the Islamic values that all human beings, regardless of race, regardless of nationality, regardless of color or gender, are all equal under the eyes of God. And this is what the Ahmadiyya Muslim community stands for. Or you can take this one.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for hanging in. For the people who came here at 5, you are troopers. I'm Mike Rothbaum. I am a rabbi who lives in Atlanta with my husband, Anthony. Well, clearly the owl is on. Hello. Anthony is hooting at me right now. I'm currently on sabbatical at Congregation Bet Havarim, which is in Toco Hills in Atlanta. Also connected as a member to Ahavad Achim, which is a conservative synagogue in Atlanta as well. And I got to spend this weekend with Temple Beth David, which is a Reform synagogue in Snellville. I am from New York, so I hope nobody, holds that against me. My family is from Eastern Europe, and the borders there, just like borders often do, shifted around a lot. And so we'll talk about this a little bit more, but I understand that, well, at least my family understands that borders can shift and are human-made, but there's no borders between human spirits. We're all one in God's eyes, as the Imam said.
I'll be next. I'm Neeru Singh. I'm from Guru Nanak Mission Society of Atlanta. We are located in Norcross, and I'm a Sikh. I will share some beautiful lines with you that are written by our first Guru, Guru Nanak. Nanak naam chardi kala, tere paane sarbat da pala. The meaning to that is, in your name, in reciting your name, I find the internal bliss. Oh God, please take care of everybody and bless your planet. And this is our Sikh prayer, which we say about twice a day, if not more. So that's how we are brought up. We ask for everybody to be in peace. I grew up in Chicago. So New York, Chicago, we're not troublemaker, and we do have a bigger skyline than you guys do. As a work, I work for Department of Health and Human Services. We protect all of your medical records. So I do that kind of a work on the side as well. And I also run a medical home health agency. Thank you. I'm glad we all get to meet today.
Hi, again, I'm Jenny Sankey, and I wanted to tell you a little bit about what it is to be Presbyterian. It's one flavor of Christianity. Like in any of our faith traditions, there's a variety of ways to practice it. We share with all Christians belief in a triune God and a belief that Jesus is fully human and fully divine. We share some beliefs with other Protestant Christians. We believe that the Bible, made up of the Old and the New Testament, is our sacred text. And we believe that there is nothing that we can do to earn God's gift of grace. And then there are some particular things to being Presbyterian, like one big word we like to use sometimes is the sovereignty of God. There's no part of human life that can be set apart from our life in God, no part of creation that God cannot be found. In this denomination, we're known for a commitment to social justice, theological diversity. Pastor Katie talked this morning about how we're kind of one big tent for different kinds of theological beliefs. We have a system of governance that is representative leadership and decision making through elected leaders and elected bodies. And our denomination cares a lot for education, community service, careful interpretation of scripture, and living out our theological focus on grace. And this particular congregation, our slogan that we love to say is that we are connecting faith with everyday life. And that is something that we seek to do to live out that love of God in our everyday lives.
Thank you all. That was lovely to learn a little more about each other's faiths. So we're going to get started on the topic at hand. So I'm going to start, and I'll start with you. I'll just keep this going. Okay. What about your faith or personal experience motivates you to speak out against intolerance and hate?
First of all, my personal experience when I came from Mexico was my accent and very bad luck with police. Every time, most of the time when they stop me, they will ask me instead of driver license, I will slash the window and slide the window, and then they will ask papers. So one of the things is that, I never talk back because I had bad experience. One sent me to court and it was ended up paying $280 just because I was talking back to a authority in the United States. But one of the things when I came to the Episcopal Church and start working with our Hispanic people, one of them came to me to say a story that broke my heart because the boy was 17 years when he was driving for bad people. That's the truth. He was just a driver. So they got to stop. They find these people in a bad place at the bad time, and all of them went to jail. So all of them went to a special jail, where they have special things for each one of them. So ended up the 5 people, which it counts the driver, the other 4 were exit the jail in 3 months because they were citizens of the United States of America. But the one that was driving and did nothing, just drive the people, was with all the bad things, he was his bad luck. So they put all the charges against him. He's still in jail. His mother is right here with me today because I told her that I will speak about it because that's something that it breaks my heart, and still they cannot do anything. And all mom is asking is for them to deport him. That's all she's asking. But because all these charges against him, the government won't let him go anywhere. He's now, after 17 years, he's now 34. So you can imagine the mom is suffering every single day because he is not guilty of anything, just driving bad people.
So this is your faith, your personal experience. What about your faith experience? What piece of that motivates you to speak out?
With my faith experiences that, we all together, we all the same, and God is telling us to love each other as he loves us. And the love is for everybody with no differences.
Okay. If you want to pick up that microphone. So I'm going to ask the question so you have it in front of your eyes or your ears. What about your faith or personal experience motivates you to speak out against intolerance and hate?
So as Ahmadi Muslims, we are on the receiving end of hate and intolerance from multiple ends. One is the Islamophobia we face here in the West. There is a fair amount of ignorance about the religion of Islam in the West. For instance, when 9/11 occurred, I was in high school. And I remember the day it occurred and the day after, people used to call me terrorist because I was a Muslim. People who I thought were my friends would actually ask me, hey, Hamad, why did Osama bin Laden do this? As if I knew who he was or what his reasons were. And so there is Islamophobia and ignorance that we have to face just being Muslims here in the West. However, then as Ahmadi Muslims, we also face a great amount of intolerance and hate from fellow Muslims. Because as Ahmadi Muslims, we believe that Mirza Ghulam Ahmad was the reformer and messiah of the latter days. So we've accepted him as prophesied. The rest of the Muslim world is still waiting for that reformer or that messiah to appear. And because we believe he's appeared, the rest of the Muslim world has pretty much disowned us. All the other sects within Islam have gone together and they've passed official edicts declaring that Ahmadi Muslims, they're disbelievers. They're apostates. They're liable to be killed. You can murder them. You can attack their mosques. You can do anything you want with them. This occurs in Muslim countries. So in Muslim majority countries, we're technically not allowed to worship as Muslims. We can't call our mosques as mosques. We can't perform the Islamic forms of worship. We can't go to Makkah to perform Hajj or Umrah or pilgrimage. We're banned from doing all of these things. Regularly in Pakistan, Bangladesh, Indonesia, our mosques are attacked. Our members are killed. In 2010, they attacked 2 mosques in Lahore, in Pakistan. More than 100 Ahmadi Muslims were massacred that day by other Muslim extremists. My mother tells me these stories of when she was born and raised in Pakistan. She told me this story of how one night, late at night in her village, at around 2 a.m., her brothers came in and they said, we need to leave the house right now. And they asked why. They said that Muslim extremist clerics are in our village and they're burning down the homes of every single Ahmadi Muslim in this village. So my mom's family packed up all of their belongings. They ran out of their house, escaped that village. And in that village, every single home of an Ahmadi Muslim was burned that night. So she narrowly escaped with her life. So this is the reason why, we receive hate. And so on a personal level, this is the impetus for us speaking out on our behalf. However, we don't just speak out on our behalf. Anywhere where anybody receives hate and faces this intolerance, our faith requires us. The Quran requires us that you have to stand up for anybody else who is also suffering. The Quran, the sacred word of God that we believe in Islam, there's a verse that actually says when synagogues, when churches, when cloisters or mosques, when any of them are attacked, it is a Muslim's duty to stand up and defend those people, defend the freedom of religion. So it's not just about us. If my brother's synagogue is attacked, or if my sister's church is attacked, or if my sister's Gurdwara is attacked, as Muslims, we have to stand up and defend them and stand arm in arms with them. This is required by our faith. The Prophet, peace be upon him, was once sitting with his people, and a funeral procession passed by. It was a Jewish man. His followers, he stood up out of respect. The followers asked, why should we stand up? He's a Jew. The Prophet said, was he not a human being? Does he not deserve respect? And so he stood up and taught Muslims respect all people. And so finally, I'll end with this. The Prophet said that when you see oppression and hate, there's 3 things you can do. Either stop it with your hands if you have power. If you don't, raise your voice, speak out. And if you can't even do that, then at least hate the oppression in your heart. And this means anywhere anyone faces oppression, whether it's us or anybody else, as Muslims, we have to speak out and defend people's rights. Thank you.
So, you want to hear the question?
I love when you talk. So
Oh.
you just say whatever you want to say.
Oh.
It's great. She sings too. Have you heard this?
What about your faith or personal experience motivates you to speak out against intolerance and hate?
Yeah, so we talked about, I hope I'm not giving anything away. We had a little meeting before, right? And I was that guy who was like, well, faith, I don't know how about this word faith, because to me, there's a little bit of a Christian bias, and even in the word, even though we use it because it's interfaith and we want to be interfaith, right? But faith as the substitute for religion, meaning that if I have faith, then I'm part of a religion. If I don't have faith, I'm no longer part of the religion. Jews, in addition to being a religion, are a people. We're a people before we were a religious group. And the origins of Jewishness are Abraham and Sarah, the two first. They're Hebrews. They're not Jews. And what is Hebrew in the Hebrew language is Ivri. And what's an Ivri? An Ivri is one who crosses over. It's a border crosser. So from the beginning, we are number one, a people, right? So you don't, even if you're an atheist, you can still be a Jew. And sometimes Jews are excited to hear that because they're, I don't know what I think, right? But we're a people who crossed over, and we went from Ur to Canaan, and then to Egypt, back to Canaan, and we talked about Eastern Europe, and there are Jews from Iraq, and there are Jews from Ethiopia, right? So knowing what it means to be a people, and knowing what it means for the vast majority of Jewish history to be a minority people where someone else is in charge. We kind of get this in our bones. What is it, why is it important to have relationships with other people? Well, because we want to be there, we want to show up for them. And that's when Jewish and non-Jewish relationships are at their best. We've done that. First of all, non-Jews have shown up for us. You know about the non-Jews who showed up for the Jewish people during the Holocaust, which is, there's a separate section of Yad Vashem, which is the Holocaust Museum in Israel, just for what are called righteous Gentiles. Goes all the way back to the Bible and the Torah. When we're living under an oppressive, racist regime, we would call it today, when Pharaoh's Egypt says the Israelites are born suspects, there's something wrong with them, we better enslave them or kill them. Moses' mother, Yocheved, sends him down down the river, down the Nile in a basket. And who pulls him out? Anybody know who pulls Moses out of the water? Yeah. Pharaoh's daughter. No, it's okay. Right, Bat Paro, Pharaoh's daughter, and she is the one. Now, this is the daughter of empire, right? She was, push him down. He's one of those Hebrews. She knows he's a Hebrew. She pulls him out. And if it's not for her, there's no Jews, right? And so we've tried to, I think when we're at our best, we're showing up for civil rights in the United States. I went with American Jewish World Service to Ghana, to Guatemala, to different places where we say, as you've heard, it's interesting, across religious traditions, what we call in Hebrew, B'Tselem Elohim. Each person is created in the image of God. Each person is a reflection of God. And that's an incredibly revolutionary teaching, even today, when people want to slice and dice us and say this one's good and that one's bad. And right? We're representing, I'm looking around, I think we're representing 5 continents and how many genders and how many sexual orientations. And every one of us is a reflection of God. That's in our basic teachings. And just when we start to have the fights that we have, just going back to that core teaching, it's so important.
So, what about your faith or personal experience motivates you to speak out against intolerance and hate?
Sure. We are a minority. And we did have one incident in Wisconsin where shooter came to the Gurdwara and he shot. And that still disturbs me. And every time I go to Gurdwara on Sunday, in my mind, I'm looking around. I'm like, what if somebody walks in here today? And then do we have a how to get out plan? And that shouldn't be. I shouldn't feel that way. Nobody should feel that way. So when we talk, all of us, the answer to that is that it's the ignorance. It's people not knowing. Are they really fighting for religion? No, they are not. It's just that they don't have the knowledge of religion. We are all one light, but they don't know. So it's an ignorance that they don't know. They don't have a knowledge of every religion. They don't know if they are fighting for a religion, they don't know that they're not fighting for religion. So this is our job here as an interfaith and all the ones who read books, who know that to educate people, let them know what religion is about, that we belong to the same light.
So just to be, I want to make sure I'm hearing, so you're talking your faith and your personal experience are all intertwined.
So when I sit in the Gurdwara on Sunday, I'm listening to our prayers, but at the same time, my mind is running, what if somebody comes from there? And it shouldn't be. And then I'm like, God, please forgive me. I understand, but that had happened, and that stays in my mind. And then being I'm not one of the trustees, but my husband is. So it's like, do we have a plan? Do we have a plan here? What are we going to do if something like that happens? And I hate it. I don't, that's a strong word, but I don't like to think that way, that somebody could do this. So to prevent this, we need to educate people. To prevent that, we as a community, it's our job to let people know that you're not fighting for religion. We all are the same.
Thank you. So, what about your faith or personal experience motivates you to speak out against intolerance and hate?
So as a white Christian, we're coming from a pretty different place than many of you. Christianity, we have Christian hegemony here in America, and Christianity and its values are the norms built into so many practices in our faith and in our government, and in our everyday lives, whether we recognize it or not. And so I am much less likely to experience intolerance and hate, except within the Christian community, at times from those who don't believe women should be pastors and ministers. I was once this is like semi-comical, but I didn't love it. I was on an airplane, stuck between two men who I had my seminary t-shirt on, and they figured out that I was a pastor and then spent the rest of the flight asking me, kind of grilling me and trying to get me to change my mind on myself being a pastor. Was unsuccessful. But what I see in the Christian faith is God always drawing the circle wider. And actually, maybe God already has drawn a very, very wide circle, and it's us having to redraw our circles wider and wider within that. In Scripture, we see Jesus crossing all kinds of social and cultural and relational boundaries to build relationships. And when asked, he says that the greatest commandment is to love God and to love your neighbor. And I believe that all of you are my neighbors. It is not just other Christians. And in 2017, I would say is a moment that really kind of informed and enriched my faith in considering interfaith relationships. I heard Sikh activist Valerie Kaur speak at a college. I was not a college. I took a group of college students to an event that she spoke at. And she talked about a term that I have done lots of reading about since, called revolutionary love. And she writes, if you cringe when people say that love is the answer, I do too. I'm not talking about sentimentality or civility or thoughts and prayers. I'm talking about love as a labor, a conscious embodied practice. And that has really enriched my Christian faith in studying more of her readings. And thinking of love as an ongoing labor that we may not see the end work of, but that the importance of continuing to stand up and speak out and be in solidarity with our neighbors, and particularly as Christians in standing up and speaking out against against white Christian nationalism within our own faith. Is just unacceptable that we are on these different wavelengths of what God and what Christ taught us in the same scripture we are reading. And so that just ongoing hate speech and work in our country continues to motivate me to witness and model love rather than hate, and continue the labor of love.
So heard a lot of similar stories, but also not just from the experience of hate and intolerance, but also a common value of humanity from all the different faiths, that is required. That's my assessment. Y'all heard what you heard. That's what I heard.
Humanity is a reflection of divinity.
Pardon?
Humanity is a reflection of divinity,
Mm.
right? That there's it's not just flesh and bone. We're talking about the infinite spirit in each person.
Blessed be. Reverend Sankey, are you okay with starting for the next one? Okay. I'm going to reverse it this time. So this is think about this as a kind of a complex question. What is your assessment of how this affects you and your faith community? How's it impacting your faith community? Are you noticing trends, and how are you actually addressing it?
So in my previous answer, there are some similar themes that carry over here. We are a mainline white Christian denomination, and many of our members look a lot like me. And so we don't experience the same level of targeting, but we have many members, of course, of the Christian faith and people of the Christian faith that worship in this building every Sunday that experience hate in a different way. We have co-worshiping communities. I see a couple of our friends from Faith Gwinnett here that worships here on Sunday afternoon. We have a Taiwanese church that worships here on Sunday morning, as well as a Korean church. And as many of them are immigrants, we know that they experience hate in some of the ways already described on a regular basis for their faith and for their ethnicity. We have several LGBTQ members of our congregation, and youth and adults and all around. And we know that they experience acts of faith, many from within the Christian faith. We hope not from within our congregation, but it is still work that we must continue to do to draw that circle for ourselves wider. And even race relations continue to be an issue, I would say, even within our congregation. We have a few people who have more recently joined our staff who are people of color, and they have experienced microaggressions and unwelcome comments from members of our congregation. And so we continue to try to make this a more safe place for all of those folks. I would say that trend-wise, like I said, we're a community that doesn't experience very many hateful acts directed toward us, but as our membership increases in diversity and we strengthen our values of welcome and inclusion, which we are working on emphasizing more and more, then we start to come up on people's radar. People start to notice us on the internet, or notice us at a Pride festival, or notice us at different places, and we have started to kind of feel that in some ways. But like I said before, we are very much protected by white privilege in a lot of ways here. Within our own community, I would say ways that we address this, prayer is certainly one of them, that we pray on Sunday mornings together. We encourage people to pray in different ways on their own and with groups. We have a commitment to serving in the Duluth community and beyond with things of hunger, with advocacy. We're part of an organization called Presbyterians for a Better Georgia that advocates in the legislature for housing and healthcare and homelessness. And so we have more and more members getting involved with that. Our leadership is in ongoing discussions to try to better our intercultural sensitivity. And we hope that that is something that broadens within our community. And we are really trying to develop an ethos of extravagant hospitality here for all of our neighbors, whoever walks through our doors. And so, yeah, that's what we're up to.
Thank you so much. So, what is your assessment of how this issue affects you and your faith community? How are your members feeling in terms of feeling more vulnerable or less safe? Are there any trends you're seeing, and how are you addressing this?
Sure. So for us, our men wear turban, so that's very unique. And a lot of people don't know why we wear turban. And for us, our 10th guru described as our turban is, and at that time, the kings used to wear a turban. So our 10th guru said, you guys, everybody's a king, everybody's equal. So that's why he required all Sikh men to wear a turban. So a lot of people don't know that. So so it's automatically, there's a prejudice, or there's like, they have decided that we're different. So to protect that, I make sure that my husband or our kids or our community members go to meetings like that to have a knowledge of our turban or who we are, that our religion is just like everyone else's. There's no difference, that we're all the same. Next question.
So have you experienced and noted any kind of trends happening in your community?
So my fear is that a lot of people, Sikhs, they don't wear turban. So they give up on that because I can share one experience. My brother, when he was little, he didn't wear a turban yet, but he still had long hair. And we went to McDonald's and he went to men's bathroom, and the lady, they're like, no, 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 you can't go there. You got to go to girls' bathroom. It's because they thought he was a girl. So so that's why I'm like, no, we got to make that presence, that we need to be out there and let people know who we are. And once we know, like I have explained it to you guys today, that the reason behind the turban is that we're all equal. We're as big as the king because he's a human being too. Now you guys are like, oh, right? So that's why we try to bring that out.
So I'm hearing the way you address it in your community is to make sure everyone's educated in the history and the rationale for why things are expressed the way they are.
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, Rabbi Mike. Oh. What is your assessment of how this issue affects you and your faith community? How is your community feeling more vulnerable or less safe? Are there any trends you're seeing, and what are you doing to address it?
Yeah, this is one of those, how much time do you have questions, right? Yeah, but I don't know. It's,
Right
I know it's for rabbis to say hello in 3 minutes. So, so first of all, there's just a general rise of hate in this country in the last 9 or so years that I think we can notice. And religious communities have been under attack in general. So you talked about the Sikh community in Wisconsin. There was the attack on the Black church in South Carolina. Synagogues have been under attack as well. There has been a flourishing of white supremacy and white supremacist groups and Christian nationalist groups, such that we've had attacks on synagogues in Poway, California, and in Pittsburgh, and in Texas and Colleyville. Some of those people write manifestos. They actually tell us why they're doing what they're doing. And they will sometimes quote Christian scripture, and really focusing on the supersessionist ideas. This phrase synagogue of Satan, which I think comes from the book of Revelation, so that they expand that to all synagogues if they're, if they're particularly troubled and they have access to weapons. Sometimes the really important interreligious work that we talk about is the thing that upsets people. The Pittsburgh shooter was upset by HIAS, which used to be the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, which helped Jewish immigrants, now is devoted to work for all immigrants in this country. And in his manifesto, he wrote that the Jewish people were trying to undermine the white race by bringing in dark-skinned people. And that sounds insane. And it turns out that's become almost a mainstream belief in some right-wing circles. The great replacement theory. So when you hear Jews will not replace us, like, who is this? What do they mean Jews will not replace us? We're not, I don't want to be that guy with the pitchfork, with the pitchfork, with the torch, the tiki torch, whatever. What they mean is Jews will not replace us with dark-skinned people. That's just bluntly what they're talking about. And so you've got that on the right, and not quite as much. There is on the left also this sense of, particularly around Israel-Palestine issues, that Jews are somehow responsible. That was interesting when you talked about after 9/11, why did bin Laden do what he did? So Jews sometimes get asked, well, what are you doing about Israel? And what do you think about Palestine? And excuse me, like, I'm just trying to get some fries, I don't know who you are, right? And then, are you a Zion? You see this sometimes it feels like it gets overblown, but it does happen, like on campuses and with young people. If you're a Zionist, you're not allowed in. And am I a Zionist? I don't know. Am I a Zionist? Regular Jews are walking around. I don't know. What do I think about the philosophy of Jewish nationalism? I don't know. But I know that they're like 45% of the world's Jews live in Israel. So, like, I care about them. Does that make me a bad person? I don't know. And some people that does. And the effect has been Jews are walking around feeling completely beleaguered and completely, not at ease. And so now I would never want to lock the doors of a synagogue, but of course now every synagogue has its doors locked. We want an alarm. We always have to have an alarm. We have to, who wants to hire a police officer for $400, a service? But we're hiring police officers. We're doing training. If somebody comes, I want to be able to see the door if somebody comes in. And yeah, I don't want to think about it either. But will I throw the prayer book at the person to slow them down? Well, and I'll say, everyone run out. That we have plans in synagogues. What happens if a shooter, God forbid, comes in? So that's gets in the way of spiritual moments. It's hard to pray when you're thinking about these things. We are holding out hope, though, that gatherings like this can be the response to people who say that my opinion and my worldview is so important that your life is expendable and I can sacrifice your life on the altar of my worldview. We think that the meetings like this can really be the counter against that, God willing.
Thank you. Okay, Mom. What is your assessment of how this issue affects you and your faith community? Is your community feeling more secure, less secure, more vulnerable? Are you seeing any trends, and what are you doing?
So I mentioned that our community is heavily persecuted in Muslim countries, and a fair number of our members of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community here are immigrants. They're people who immigrated to this country seeking refuge. They sought asylum here because of the fact that they were not able to live their lives in peace in Muslim majority countries. They escaped with their lives. Many of them had death threats. Their shops were closed down. Their homes were attacked. All of this occurred. And they came here looking for freedom of religion. Came here looking to be able to worship in a mosque freely, be a Muslim freely, and be whatever you want to be freely. And for the majority of the time, it's great. America is an amazing country, and in many ways, it's more Islamic than Muslim countries, in my opinion. The fact that we have freedom of speech and thought and belief, all of these things are very Islamic ideals. However, it's not perfect, right? Our members came here looking to be Ahmadi Muslims in peace. However, then these kids who go to school, they come and tell me at the mosque that today this kid called me a terrorist. Today my teacher was racist against me, and I could tell it was for the reason because I'm a Muslim. You know, girls and women will say that we go to the store, to the shop or school with headscarves and wearing long overcoats, and we get treated differently because we're Muslim. We get treated differently because we wear a scarf. We're looked at differently. Sometimes we're cursed out because we're Muslim. And so a mother was recently actually saying that, you know, I had no idea. It was never in my wildest imagination that we live in Pakistan, living in fear, living in persecution. We just want to be Muslims in peace. We ran away to America to live in peace. And we thought we would get it here, but as soon as we get here, now my kid goes to school and is labeled a terrorist. Now, when I go to the store, I'm still called a terrorist because I cover my head. She had said, we escaped from one persecution. And yes, things are majority a lot better here, but now we're involved in a different type of persecution here. And so this is the way in which our community is facing these issues and dealing with these issues of running from one persecution to another type of ignorance and hate and intolerance that we see here. Now, if there's any trends, you know, trends go up and down. And the trends always related to what's happening in the world around us and in our society. So for instance, whenever there's a shooting, whenever there's a bomb going off somewhere, somebody drives a car into a group of people, whenever anything happens, the first innate gut reaction is just your heart goes out to the victim. The first innate reaction is you feel horrible. You know, you pray for those people, you do whatever you can. But then as the dust kind of settles and details start coming out, I guarantee you every single person in the Muslim world is holding their breath. Because we know that if this person who did this attack was a Muslim, our entire faith is on trial now. We know now that I have to speak out and defend my faith because one idiot who supposedly is a Muslim, whose actions have nothing to do with Islam, but one crazy lunatic did something stupid, now I'm on trial. Now I have to defend myself. And so we're walking on eggshells the entire time. In those moments and in those days, if we're out in public and you're not having a good day, you're a little tired, you have a frown on your face, now as a Muslim, you want to kill all of us. That's the reaction you get. If my wife is out in public wearing a headscarf, it's very tense in those days after an attack because you know people are focused on Islam. I remember one time after one of the attacks in Paris, we were driving somewhere. My wife was with me, she's wearing a headscarf, and some guy driving beside us just starts giving us the finger because she's wearing a headscarf. And so this is the way the trends go up and down based on what's happening. Every time something happens, if it's a Muslim, then we have to defend our faith. Our entire faith is on trial. And so that's kind of what we're seeing. Now, how do we address this in our community? The Ahmadiyya Muslim community is blessed with leadership and united leadership. We are led by the Khalifa of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. He's a successor to the Messiah Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, who founded the community. And through the eras of turbulence and persecution, this is the fifth successor whose leadership we're currently under. And all of our leaders, all of the caliphs we call them, and especially the current caliph, have always guided the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, our members, that this is the way of divine communities. And our response will always be, when somebody curses you out, give them love. He says, your response will always be when somebody attacks you, return their attacks with prayers, turn to God. He said, all people need to see is what we're about and practice your teachings. You know, he reminds us repeatedly that were the early Jews not persecuted for their faith? Did the early Christians not live in catacombs for 300 years, persecuted for their faith? Were the early Muslims not driven out of Mecca and lived in exile in Medina because they're persecuted for their faith? What was the reaction of all of these communities? He says they resorted to prayer, they resorted to love. They never retaliated. So we address this in our community by teaching our members in the words of our caliph, pray for the people who hate you. Somebody gives you the finger, return them love. And people will see through your actions what you are actually about. And when people see through your actions what you're about, that hate will turn into love in society.
Thank you. So, Reverend Mimi, what is your assessment of how this issue affects you and your faith community? Are your members feeling more or less safe? Are there any trends you have noticed in terms of increase in frequency of attacks or hateful acts? And how are you addressing it?
Especially at the cross of the border from Mexico to United States, as everybody is afraid of. And I'm not talking about the wall. The wall is welcome to, be bigger and bigger, but I'm talking about separation of families, which have been forever. And when we think about our kids, the kids, they always separate from the families and they have cages for these kids, which is not, it's not what the Bible says, not what God wants. God wants for us to love each other. So if there is a separation of the families, the first thing we need to think about is Jesus being a son of Mary, and they separate many times. So the love that we have to show is that this doesn't exist with us, that we love, that if it's a family that needs to be separate, send them together. Don't put them in a cage. We still have some kids that they're separated in our communities. We are afraid of the police. We are afraid of our jobs. When I was a teacher, before I became a priest, one of the things that they were doing, because I'm from Mexico, probably that's what it is, I'm not sure. My principal used to send all the kids that were not welcome in any other classrooms to me. My classroom was for 25 students, ended up having 55. So when I have a check or a person who has to come and do an evaluation to me, I cannot pass my evaluation, because how you deal with 55 students when you have 25 chairs, 25 desks, and the other rest, they have to sit on the floor, on the carpet. Another thing is that when we are out of the church, and I'm going to talk about a little bit when we have COVID. When we have COVID and the pandemic hit, the first thing when they send the vaccine, I have to go to the streets, I have to go to restaurants, I had to knock doors for our people to come and get vaccinated. Because they were afraid of what? If I go there, that's what they were saying, they will ask me for papers. And the first thing they're going to do is send me to deportation. So I cannot go and get vaccinated. Our group in our church went around and tell the people, I'm going to be there and I'm the one that is going to register you. And you don't have to show me anything. So you can get vaccinated. So assessments, how we deal with all of this. One of the things is many times we need to be educated on why people come to this country, or why people need to know other countries' stories, because our story is God's story. And I opened this class called Under the Same Moon. And it's a movie called Under the Same Moon. The Mexican little boy come to see his mother over the United States and cross the border, and you have to see that. But because of that, we brought people from everywhere around the world to tell the story, how they came to the United States and what they what were the obstacles that they confront. It's many things that we can give to our churches for them to understand. Not our people understand, but the others, how to be polite. In my church, a person asked me, when you go back home? And I said, this is my home. This is Jesus' home. This is God's home. He said, no, I'm talking about Mexico. Go home. So I said, okay, God bless you. Things like that, it didn't happen in our churches. One person came to the service one day and she was with only a bra on the top and a pants, because she was not well dressed. they took it out and they called the police. And she said, all I wanted is to find God. What do we do it with our people? It's hate everywhere. It's hate when we go out at the door, in the streets, in our churches. So all I ask is just I give you, to give you courage to bring people from other countries and tell the stories. Just remember always, our stories are God's story.
Sounds like some education all around. All right. So this is our last question. And I'll start with Reverend Mimi. I'll go this way this time. What are your suggestions for how we can work together to address the problem of hate and intolerance?
Like I say, it's educate our people and our communities. So one of the things that we have in our Episcopal churches is we bring lawyers, immigration lawyers, and just regular lawyers, because, it's not only papers. It's many things, dealing with robbery or things like that. So lawyers can educate especially our youth. So we have every once a month, we have a lawyer to be sitting outside the door church, so they can, and they put all these notes that, do you want to know how to become a legal resident? Do you want to know how to get to court? Do you want to know, all these questions that people had in English and Spanish and other languages. So people will come and ask them. And this is, professional people who will tell them how to do it, how to deal with. So just bring people from everywhere and give them the opportunity to understand and to educate how this works, how to cross the border, how to become legally here in the United States, how to provide support with our kids, how to take them to the school. Sometimes they don't even know how to register the kids. So they tell them how to do it. Bring a community that help your people, and they will tell them and they will help them. So this from me. Thank you.
Imam Ahmad, what are your suggestions for how we can work together to address the problem?
I'm going to borrow a little bit from Star Wars philosophy. They say in Star Wars that fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, and hate leads to the dark side. But where does fear come from? It's ignorance. The reason you're afraid of the other is because of ignorance. You have no idea who they are, what they're about. There's these random boogeymen we've created in our minds that these people are like this, that's what they do. It's because of ignorance that then leads to fear and then, the chain to the dark side. And so the way we can combat this is battling ignorance, attack it at the root. We have to get rid of ignorance in society, and we have to educate people as to what we are all about. And that education can occur in many different ways, but what we're doing here, I feel like if we get the right audience and the right people, then us sitting together on this panel, that even if halfway across the world, people from our religions might be fighting each other for whatever reasons they have, but if we can sit here and talk about the love we have for each other, this educates people and gets rid of that ignorance. It teaches people what we are actually about. I've done a number of these events where people have told me after that I have no idea that this is what your faith actually teaches. I had no idea that this is what you're about. I've met people who are so vehemently anti-Muslim that one of them at a political rally, he came up to me and said, well, you're kind of Muslim I'm okay with. If Muslims are like you, then you guys can be here. Right? And so that's what surprised me, that you get rid of the ignorance a little bit, you educate a little bit, people's hearts do start opening up. Human being, I choose to believe, and my faith tells me to believe that human beings generally are good people. By default, we're good natured. And it's just about prying open the heart a little bit. People's hearts will open up as soon as they get to know you. It's educating people in occasions like this, dialogue like this, speaking to each other. And then not just us educating about my own faith, but I feel like when we stand up for each other as well, that's the most powerful thing we can do. So yes, I can go out there and educate people about Islam and about Muslims. But if a brother or a sister here gets up and teaches people about Islam and Muslims, they'll be like, oh, I heard it from a Christian or a Jew, or an atheist, or a Hindu or a Sikh. But if somebody is anti-Semitic and hates Jewish people, if I as a Muslim stand up and say, no, they're great people. I've read the Torah, it's an amazing teaching. But it'd be more powerful if I said it as opposed to you saying it. Right? So I feel like, and I'll say it for you even if you don't believe it. But if we stand up for each other, then I feel like that goes a long way towards battling the hate and battling the ignorance and slowly educating people. And as the more people you educate, I feel like the trend of these hateful acts will go down little by little through baby steps, but one day we'll get there.
Thank you. Okay, Rabbi Mike, what are your suggestions of how we can work together?
Well, there's some overlap. I've got three things. First is education. There's a reason that authoritarian regimes burn books, because if we don't know things, then it's easier to control us. There are political forces that don't want us to know stuff. They want schools to not be able to teach about history, like actual real history. The laws that say, we can't, when we teach about slavery and the Civil War, we have to teach it so that white kids don't feel bad. What about the black kids? They spent hundreds of years feeling bad, right? Because of the reality, right? That slavery wasn't like a work program, which is something that came through in Florida, right? Well, you learn job skills. Well, a job, you have a job, that means you get paid. That's what a job is, right? So if you're a slave, you're not getting paid, right? And for us to know the different kinds, knowing the ignorance and how to combat it. And so we've talked about this a little bit, right? So that if somebody says, Muslims, this is a hateful society and it's not an intellectual society, and like, well, we have numbers because of Arabic, Arabic numbers are the numbers we use, like zero. We wouldn't have zero if it wasn't for this culture, if somebody says, immigrants are taking and they're getting free things, it's an easy life, right? To be an immigrant and they're getting free houses no, actually they're not. They're taking so much. Well, no, actually they're the ones who are doing the work that very often native born Americans don't want to do. They're actually helping our society. Knowing this history, knowing the reality, and that takes me to number two, which is to what do we do with our privilege? And that's not a word sometimes people don't want to use anymore because, oh, now you're going to make me feel bad because I have privilege. Well, we all have some kind of privilege, right? Some of us on this panel we're male. We appear as male, right? Some of us are Christian. Some of us are native English speakers. Some of us maybe financially we have privilege. So what can you do to spend it? It's actually currency, right? So if you hear somebody saying something or somebody harassing somebody at the supermarket who has an accent, if you are white appearing, you can step in and say, no, excuse me, I think that's not okay what you're doing. If you hear somebody saying something about a Muslim or a Jew, if you're a Christian, you can say, well, that's not the way that my understanding of Jesus teaches me about religion. Now, there's a risk. People might not like you as much. Really? They're like, oh, look social justice warrior, right? Like, but you stopped them, you slowed them down. And so taking the risk of not being liked as much, that's the currency that all of us can spend, like, oh, she's a woman, she wants to be president. Like, are you serious? Right? Like, every other country has had a woman as a leader, except right? So if we're male, we can do that anyway. And then the last thing is solidarity, which is, I think, that we've talked about. When we show up for each other, that's incredibly powerful. There was an attack on a synagogue in Macon, and it was, I know I'm running out of time. I know, This was a really a hate group that hung in effigy this figure with a yarmulke, right? So this was clearly hanging a Jew, and then it had a rainbow flag, so clearly an attack on the queer community. And in Macon, which I don't know from Macon, I'm from New York, right? I don't know, Macon, Allman Brothers are from Macon, right? But all these people from everywhere came together. It was like capacity at this large church. It was a church, and the sheriff was there, and John Ossoff was there, and I got to talk, and the other rabbi got to talk. We're showing up for each other, and we're saying, when we see a swastika, who is it attacking? Is it attacking Jews? Is it attacking gay people? Is it attacking Black people? Is it attacking immigrants? Yes. The answer is yes. And so if it's attacking all of us, the response comes from all of us. And again, that's why what we're doing today. I'm so grateful to be a part of it, and it's so powerful.
So, Nehru, what are your suggestions of how we can work together to end this?
So this is a great start right here. So just imagine we have people knowing that 10 religious heads are talking about the same thing, and them knowing, so that would be an education, and them knowing that we're all talking about the same thing. It's not, most of the time, it's not even about religion. It's something that had brought up at their table at home. So if we educate people that we're all the same, just imagine 10 Sikhs came and 10 Christians and 10 of all of us are here, and them to know we're all the same. Do you think that would change their mind? So education and giving out the knowledge and letting them know who you are. As a Sikh, when we're kids, we are brought up as we are brave. So we are nation builders. Even in India, everybody knows that the military is almost 70% it's Sikhs. So we are built to answer your question, like we will stand up for somebody. We will say, hey, that's how this person speaks. Learn to listen to them. So we have that courage. Luckily, we were educated in that way that, you can stand for other, help other, and be kind.
Be kind, that's a new one, although I think it was expressed by everyone in different ways. What are your suggestions for how we can work to end this hate and intolerance?
Coming into this panel, I was sure that my job was to say the least, and I'm going to keep to that and listen to all of you and your communities and the wisdom that you bring. I think that is one of the most important ways, is to really hear each other's stories, learn each other's stories, and not only hear them and learn them, but seek to understand. We did a big series on empathy last month, and defining empathy as being able to experience the other person's feelings and then try to express them back as best you can, and leaving it there and not trying to fix it. And so I think that is the one suggestion I will add to what we've said, is that beginning with empathy, and really trying to understand one another's experience and be able to reflect it back, to show our understanding and our interest, not just to absorb, but to give back.
Well, I've got this long list that I wrote down for our next Gwinnett Interfaith Alliance meeting, because I think we heard, the actual experience. We've learned about different faiths and what they're teaching our friend communities, and the similarities, maybe some differences here and there in language or how we say it or the words that are guiding us. But the similarities are there. The differences might be there, but we can learn from those and grow from those. And what's actually happening right now, I heard some protections needed for safety and security for people. It's not there, and it's costing extra money, which churches don't have. We're seeing some rises across the world in intolerance and hate, and some in our local communities that we need to be prepared to react to. Every single person said educate in terms of things we can do. This event, more Gwinnett Interfaith Alliance events. We have a big one coming up on September 21st. It's our Peace Festival. Very excited. It's going to be at Gwinnett. So please look at our Facebook page to hear about that. Got lots of other things here. I won't go through them all because you heard them, but one that really speaks to my heart the most is solidarity, showing up. I almost want to cry when I say that, because showing up like all of you did today, you all showed up. The people on Zoom, y'all showed up. Thank you. This is what needs to happen. People need to have the courage to come and just be with people that you might not know, but start to learn. It's so important. I've learned so much from all of you. My heart is full. So, but we have a few minutes more. We went a little bit long, we always do, because it's so interesting. But we do have an opportunity. If there are a couple of questions from in the room, I would definitely offer this opportunity to anybody that wants to do a question. If you want to come up, and that way you can speak into the mics so the people on Zoom can hear your question. Come on up. Yes, please.
Thank you for giving this opportunity. Just like everybody's saying, the education, I just want to, I love traveling. And recently I went to Egypt, and naturally during the excursion, we went to a church. And guess what? What they call God? Allah. So I said, wait a minute. I'm a Muslim, and that's our God. And he just laughed at me. He says, no, that is the Arabic word of God is Allah. So I was growing up in the United States, they were saying, you are worshiping Allah, not God. So my humble suggestion, I love this country. I've been here 50 years. When I came, I was 22, now I'm 72. They still ask me where I'm from. This is a land of immigrants. We all, even my kids who are born here, we are all immigrants to this great country. But we have one goal: love each other and work together to make this country a greater country, a country where it's a love and peace, and where our children can grow up together instead of hate or fear, in peace and harmony. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the lesson was heard. Does anybody have a question? We have time for one more. Yes, can you come up? Stricker? Yeah. Oh.
This is a question for the non-Christian members of the panel. Do you study anything about the life and teachings of Jesus of Nazareth?
Imam?
Yes, actually, when I went to school, I went to it's called Ahmadiyya Institute of Islamic Studies. It was a 7-year course I took to become an imam. And we had comparative religions courses where we studied different faiths, including Christianity. We read the Bible. I've been through the Bible, especially the Gospels. We studied the life of Jesus from the Christian perspective as well as the Islamic perspective. And yes, so we have, including, Hinduism, Buddhism, Judaism, we've studied those religions. And even till now, I do periodically go through those teachings and writings just to make sure I stay on top of it.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Was it reach? Yeah. Here, I'll use it. So it's hard not to when you live in the United States. I mean, it's, Jesus is around. He's um so and yeah, it's fascinating to, you look at Sermon on the Mount and see where that overlaps. Where did he learn that? Where did love your neighbor as yourself? Like sometimes Jews don't realize that's in the Torah. V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. It's like, yeah, he's quoting the Torah, right? And I will tell you, sometimes, I don't want to speak for anybody else, sometimes how that lands for me, that's the first question. What do you know about Jesus? Somebody knows that I'm Jewish. And then the next question is, would you be willing to accept him into your life? Right. And I get that person wants something good for me. And I also just hope you can hear this from a spirit of love, that hasn't always been a good experience for Jewish people. And I imagine for Muslims as well, but I'm only speaking for myself because oh, well, if you just understood the truth about Jesus, then you would be a full Jew. You'd be a completed Jew. And then you say, thank you. I appreciate that, but I'm good. And then it gets angry. And then historically it can get violent. I just want to, I'll invite you in a spirit of love to just think about how that lands sometimes for somebody who is a minority religiously in this culture.
Nehru.
Of course, we have all read Bible. It's in your hotel drawer. So we have all, yes, I have read. To answer the question, so when you read a Bible, you read Guru Granth Sahib, every book that you read, they all have a same message. So after you read, you're like, oh, it's all the same. So yes, I have read.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, please.
I was going to add that, in Islam, we believe in all of the prophets. So all of the religions represented here, as well as other religions, we believe they were all divinely revealed by God. So we believe that Guru Nanak was a saint of God. We believe that Krishna was a prophet of God. We believe that Buddha was a prophet of God. We believe Lao Tzu, Confucius were prophets of God. We believe, of course, in Adam, Abraham, Noah, David, Isaac, Solomon. We believe Moses was a prophet of God. We believe Jesus was a prophet of God as well. In fact, Jesus is the most quoted prophet in the Quran. And so when we hear the name Jesus, in Arabic we call him Isa, every Muslim has a sentiment of love that pours out of our heart for Jesus. So we love Jesus. We don't consider him son of God, but we consider him to be a noble prophet of God who came with a mission and taught the same message that all religions and all prophets taught. And so when we read the Quran and the Quran talks about what's called the Injil, meaning the Gospels, or the Torah, meaning the Torah, it actually encourages us that read and study the lives of these prophets and messengers. Read and study the previous books, because they will also contain sources of guidance for you. So as a Muslim, when I read that in the Quran, that becomes my impetus to go study the Gospels, to go study the Torah, read about the other prophets of God, and how that entire chain is linked together along with Islam and the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him.
Okay. Wow. That was a really hard question to end up on. And you can see that this is hard stuff to respect another's faith and how we need to think about how the question feels in some cases, because that was also expressed here. And that's important stuff. So Gwinnett Interfaith Alliance International Peace Festival, Day of Peace, the festival on September 21st. We hope you'll all be there. I hope you'll join us at our next meeting. We have a Facebook page. Is the website back up, Steve? Not yet. Okay, the website went down for a while. We have a free website, so sometimes, but our Facebook page is great. Okay, you'll see lots of good information there. We're happy to have you join us for some food and fellowship and chatting with each other. And I want to just say, this was amazing. Y'all are just, I don't know, this was, every time we do these, I learn more and more and more, and I'm just amazed by what I learn from everyone's faith. Not my faith.
Word of the day is education.
Huh?
The word of the day is education.
It's the education, and that's part of our mission. So that's why we do this. Yes. Steve is the founding person for the Gwinnett Interfaith Alliance.
There was a lot of people there with me at that time. I appreciate that. Actually, it was formed out of solidarity after the shooting in Pittsburgh. But my thought listening to this today is, education and how do we get together with the people that are not part of our choir. I think most of us here are part of the choir. So I know Bruce has made some contacts with a group called Braver Angels. And, oh, they are, okay. Maybe you could talk a little bit, but I really think having those kind of conversations where you purposely engage people that really have divergent views and get them to talk civilly, I think that would, bring in more people into the conversation where, we're just, I went to an interfaith event at the temple, and the guy said, yeah, we are talking to the preacher, but we are talking to the choir. The choir needs to be buoyed up too, and I think this is great and important, but if we go reach out and do those type of activities, I think that I suggest that,
Okay, we're done. Blessed be.